This week on Vaticano, how is the situation looking for Christians in the Middle East in 2020? Join us for an update from the Patriarch of the Syriac Catholic Church. We also hear from new Cardinal Michael Fitzgerald, President Emeritus of the Vatican Council for Interfaith Dialogue, for his perspective on the search for peace in the Holy Land. For this and more, Vaticano starts now. Pope Francis made dialogue with Muslims a focus of his week. February the 4th marked the first anniversary of the historic Declaration on Human Fraternity, signed by Pope Francis and the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Ahmad Al-Tayyib, last year in Abu Dhabi. Pope Francis sent delegates and a video message to the Convention for Human Fraternity in the United Arab Emirates, renewing his appeal for a better future for humanity, a future free from hatred, rancor, extremism, and terrorism, in which the values of peace, love, and fraternity prevail. The hereditary prince of the Kingdom of Bahrain visited the Vatican, renewing his invitation to Pope Francis to visit the country. In Bahrain, Catholics number 80,000 out of 1.5 million inhabitants in the country. The majority of Catholics are work migrants. A Catholic cathedral dedicated to Our Lady of Arabia is currently being built there. Unfortunately, hostilities and persecution of Christians continue across the Middle East. Pope Francis made an appeal after the Angelus prayer on Sunday for the protection of women and children fleeing violence in Syria.
I renew my heartfelt appeal to the international community and to all the actors involved to make use of diplomatic instruments, dialogue and negotiations in compliance with the national humanitarian law to safeguard the life and fate of civilians.
More than 500,000 people have been displaced in 2 months in the region of Idlib in northwestern Syria. The 2019 Abu Dhabi Declaration aimed to open a new chapter in relations between Muslims and Christians, but political instability is threatening the very existence of the Christian populations in the region. That's why 6 Catholic patriarchs from Lebanon, Syria, Egypt, and Iraq met with the Holy Father on February the 7th.
So we did thank him for whatever he is doing. We told him we know that it's not easy because of this, what we call the dirty politics, exercised by many politicians in the Western sphere because of their opportunism. They see just land for their interest. Christians are leaving their homelands in the Middle East because they don't believe in this kind of opportunistic politics of the Western countries. We thank Catholics and Christians, the common of the European people. They understand our plight, but it's very sad to say that we have been left behind, neglected, abandoned by the politicians. Even we can say, I keep telling, we have been betrayed because we are minorities. We all are of apostolic churches. We are patriarchs. That means the ancient sees of Alexandria, Antioch, Babylon, and it's very sad what is happening now.
Patriarch Yunan was skeptical that the new Peace to Prosperity plan rolled out by the U.S. and Israeli governments would bring the lasting peace it promises.
For us, it brings more, let's say, threats than solutions. Christians, they are the mediators among Muslims and Jews. But it's very sad to say that we return to the Western politicians. They don't unite their efforts to request the just solution for both the Israeli and the Palestinians, and especially to preserve the holy sites open to all three religions. And because of that, all efforts of the Holy See seem to be without effect, because they don't have the support, that means the help of the powerful nations in the world.
Speaking about a new initiative organized by the Italian Bishops' Conference called Mediterranean Frontier of Peace, Patriarch Yunan said that every meeting that raises the awareness of the situation of Christians in the Middle East is good and helpful.
We hope this is the first time that the Italian Catholic Church takes this kind of step to look to our suffering and to find a way to help us. Of course, they are not only talking about Christian presence, they are talking about mostly dialogue among the peoples of the Mediterranean Sea.
To really make a change in the lives of Christians in the Middle East, the Patriarch said, they need more deeds and not only words. In a few moments, we'll be back with more on Vaticano. Newly appointed Cardinal Michael Fitzgerald heading to pray for the maternal intercession of Our Lady in Portico. The British Cardinal was in Rome to take possession of the church appointed to him by the Holy Father. The icon of Our Lady in Portico is said to be miraculous. Romans still remember that Our Lady protected them from the plague of 1656 and an earthquake in 1703. After being created cardinal by Pope Francis last fall, this is the intimate moment of taking on a Roman parish, also known as his titular see. Cardinal Fitzgerald is actually already very familiar with Rome, having worked in the Roman Curia for almost 2 decades.
I'm created cardinal when I'm over the age of 80, so I'm not one of the cardinals who will enter into conclave and do the primary duty of a cardinal, which is to elect the Bishop of Rome. But it was it's an honor that the Pope Francis has given me. I see it as a recognition of the importance of this dialogue with people of other religions, because I've been engaged in that most of my missionary life.
After many years working in the Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue, Cardinal Fitzgerald was appointed its president by St. Pope John Paul II in 2002. On February 15, 2006, Pope Benedict XVI made him Apostolic Nuncio to Egypt and delegate to the League of Arab States. That same year, Pope Benedict XVI pronounced his speech in Regensburg that was widely misunderstood and led to a rough patch in the dialogue between Islam and the Catholic Church.
It was in September that he gave his speech. I happened to be in France, in Lourdes at that time, And I had a telephone call from Egypt saying, come back straight away because there's a lot of trouble here. And so I did return, not immediately, but almost immediately. What was my reaction? This mention of Islam, he was quoting the Byzantine emperor, who was very critical of Muhammad and of Islam, was in the introduction to his talk. The talk itself on faith and reason was, I think, quite acceptable for everyone.
It's been about a year now since the Holy Father went to Abu Dhabi and signed that declaration. Do you have any thoughts or reactions to that, or the impact for the Christians in the Middle East in that area?
I don't really know how the Christians in the Middle East have reacted to that. What has pleased me is that, you know, it's not just one statement that has come out, but there's been the forming of a committee to implement this statement, which is very wide, it's very courageous, it's wide-ranging. There are certain questions that one could put, but I think that this is, it gives an interesting starting point for meetings. People say it's not theological, but it is based on a theology of creation, in fact, of seeing everything as God's gift, that humanity is God's gift. And so that's why it's human fraternity. It's not a religious fraternity, it's a human fraternity, human brotherhood. And because the very fact that we are human beings, we have to consider each human being as a brother or a sister. And that is important.
Very recently, President Donald Trump of the United States has proposed, because I know of your time in Jerusalem, he's proposed, what he's calling a peace deal that, he's been speaking to President Netanyahu of Israel as well, and they're speaking about, the way that they're going to divide, Jerusalem and Israel. Do you have any thoughts on this? Or
I saw on television the announcement of this great plan with President Trump and Netanyahu. There was no Palestinian present. How can you make an agreement? So the whole process was, I don't think that this was a fair process, really.
Do you think the Vatican will respond to it?
The Vatican has always supported the claims of the Palestinians to have their own state and will continue to say that. Also the respect for Jerusalem and respect for the United Nations and the decisions of the United Nations. And this new plan doesn't respect those decisions at all.
And Your Eminence, one last question. So I know as you were taking possession of your church, there's Brexit. How would it impact Christians and the Catholic Church in that sense? Do you think there will be an impact to it?
We don't really know what will be the effects of this withdrawal. I saw that the bishops for Europe have said even if Great Britain is not in the European Union, it is still part of the continent of Europe, and so the British bishops will be included in this committee. And I think that we have to continue in that spirit, a spirit of cooperation.
Your Eminence, thank you so much for joining us today in the studio and answering all of our questions.
You're welcome.
We'll be back after a short break with more on Vaticano. The release of the document on human fraternity for world peace and living together, signed by Pope Francis and the Grand Imam in the United Emirates last year, was an historic event, which has impacted not only the Christian and Muslim communities worldwide, The Holy See delegation at the UN in Geneva and the mission of Egypt to the UN Geneva came together to celebrate and promote the values of peace and tolerance the document aims to highlight.
Fraternity is not an optional. No? Now we can ask us whether we have something similar already in the past. We have other values that are quite commonly accepted, let's say freedom. Everybody knows that freedom today is a really basic element of a social life. Equality, it's not reached, but we are still striving to reach the equality, better equality, or should I say, fraternity, which is a new element, more inclusive element, was somehow forgotten. And the vision of the Pope was to promote this, especially in the dialogue with the Muslim communities and everybody else, certainly. But Muslim communities are important at the beginning of important dialogue, which was always present. And the occasions and circumstances has shown that this meeting would be appropriate in this format. Now it's going to be a follow-up. It is not just a meeting. There's going to be kind of declaration, a cosmetical retouch of something that existing. No. We could see that also in the gathering we had, that problems are real, and we have to have also now elaborate a plan of action, how to make first steps in this way on moving toward a human, global fraternity of human mankind. I think this is very important, and this is immediately understood by many as a potential of having a new resource for fronting and facing the problems that we are going to have certainly in the future, especially in the world that is as dangerous as we have it today.
The document was signed and supported by two prominent religious leaders. So what role does a non-religious organization such as the United Nations play in that context?
Usually the religious organization, Catholic Church included, and especially probably Catholic Church, we prefer that all the religious dialogue that we lead, it means ecumenical dialogue, interreligious dialogue, happens within the relations between religious organizations, not in the framework of something else. So we are gathering, we meet because we believe in God, and we believe that what we are doing is linked to our religious belief. This was always discussed. They said, why shouldn't it be done in a framework or something else? It could bring a new input to another organization. But we always divided. It is governments that do, it means there are so many things done by the governments. But what the Catholic Church does and the other religious organizations, we prefer to have it exclusively religious framework. This is very productive because it can be somehow a new resource in the case new tensions start and so on. So this is one thing. Why in the United Nations? On the other side, United Nations says fantastic forum, so we cannot say let's keep that somewhere, no? And United Arab Emirates permanent mission to the United Nations Geneva wanted to launch this together with the embassy of permanent mission of Egypt and some other organizers, just to show it, this is the real place to show what happened. And the interest was considerable. Certainly, it is important, what I heard during the meeting, that what we heard from the floor is that we do not speak just to elite. It means in this case would be that we do not speak just to religious elite, no? But to everybody. And certainly this is our intention. The intention is that everybody would understand that. And I think this is also why a meeting at the United Nations and an event that we had
Pope Francis welcomed Prime Minister of Croatia Andrej Plenković at the Apostolic Palace and discussed the future of Europe at the start of the Croatian presidency of the Council of the European Union, with emphasis on the demographic revitalization in Europe.
An element which I emphasized in particular, which I think is an added value that Croatia brought to the European agenda, with a strategic agenda content, with the commissioner that is in charge of demography, which never was the case before in history. I have renewed invitation to the Pope Francis to visit Croatia. We understand his logic of his apostolical visits, and I'm sure that when he decides and the right moment comes, that he will visit our country.
The Croatian Prime Minister and Pope Francis also discussed the possible canonization of Blessed Aloysius Stepinac, Archbishop of Zagreb during the Second World War. The canonization has been opposed by the Serbs, who accuse Cardinal Stepinac of collaborating with the fascist regime. Last year, Pope Francis established a Catholic Orthodox Commission to review the facts. It didn't reach a unanimous conclusion.
You know what are the expectations of the Croatian people. You know what are the expectations also of the Croatian government at the same time. What we have is a clear stance that this is a matter for the Catholic Church, for the processes within the Church to be determined and decided. Our message is patience. Well, Catholic Church is the guardian of our identity, of our tradition, of our culture, of our faith. It plays a very important role among the Croatian people and also in the modern Croatia, which is now a free and independent country, and therefore we have an excellent dialogue, a regular dialogue between the state authorities and the Catholic Church in Croatia, which represents most of the Croatian citizens who are also members of the Catholic Church.